Section 1.4 of Chemistry, the Central Science, is about more than just density, but one of the things in that section that seems worth a video talk about is density. What is density? Density is basically how much stuff is in a certain amount of space. If I take some pieces of paper, I crumple them up, I throw them in a trash can, that's not very dense. It's very loose in there. On the other hand, if I were to take a car and take it to a place where they, compact cars, trash them, you put it in one of those machines, the compressor comes down and it crushes the car down into a little cube. That's going to be a very dense cube of metal and stuff. So density is how much stuff is in a particular amount of space. Or to put it a little bit more technically, it is the amount of mass per volume, where volume is the space and mass is the amount of stuff, mass per volume. By the way, any time you have something per something, that's a divided by. Mass divided by volume is the same as mass per volume, or stuff per space, so forth. So for example, a unit of a density might be the amount of grams per liter of something. Gram being a unit of mass, and liter being a kind of volume. By the way, a milliliter, is a cubic centimeter. So if you made a box out of centimeters, a 1 centimeter high, 1 centimeter wide, 1 centimeter long, that would be a cubic centimeter, or centimeters cubed is the way it's written right here, centimeter cubed. And so a milliliter is a cubic centimeter. That means that there are 1,000 cubic centimeters in a liter. That's somewhat off to the side, but a liter is another unit of measurement. Now, okay, this might be a good time, and one of the reasons I wanted to do a video on density is because this is a good example of reminding us of some basic algebra on how to switch formulas around. So if D stands for density and M stands for mass and V stands for volume, then D equals M divided by V is another way of saying density equals mass per volume. Okay, that's what we've been saying. Density is how much stuff, how much mass is in a certain amount of space or a certain volume. Now here's the thing. You can switch this formula around so that you can solve for M or you can solve for V. And this is where the basic algebra reminder comes into play. So if you multiply both sides of this equation by V, you end up with dV. dV means D times V on the left side. And then what's going to happen is if you multiply V by M over V, then you're going to have a V in the top and a V in the bottom, and a V divided by a V, anything divided by itself, 2 divided by 2, 3 divided by 3, any number divided by itself becomes 1. And so the V's cancel out. If you multiply M over V by V, the V's cancel out and you're left with M. So if you multiply both sides of this equation by V, you end up with density times volume equals the mass. Or I could have put it the other way. Mass equals density times volume. You don't have to memorize all of these equations, because if you know the basic algebra, you can create the equations anytime you need to, depending on what they've given you. Let's consider this. Let's say you divide both sides of this that I have here by D. And so M divided by D is going to be on the right. And then dV divided by D is going to be on the left. There again, you have D over D. Any number divided by itself is 1. And so 1 times V is just V. And so you're left with V equals M over D, or volume equals mass divided by density. So if you know this basic algebraic principle, then you don't have to know all the formulas. You can derive the formulas as you need them simply by learning the first one, D equals M over V, density equals mass divided by volume. And it's easy to remember that, not as a formula, but as just what density is. Density is the amount of stuff, mass, in a certain amount of space, volume. And so D equals MV is just another way of putting it into a formula expression, what is common sense. So this has been a few words on density.